Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Spacetime channel. Tonight, we'll be exploring the deep, quiet memory of our planet. We will touch the rough texture of ancient granite and listen to the slow, steady rhythm of shifting plates that have danced beneath our feet for eons. While the ground seems solid and still to us, geology reminds us that the Earth is a living, breathing entity. It is constantly reshaping itself in a timeline so vast and so patient, it humbles the frantic pace of our daily lives, reminding us that there is beauty in slowness and stability. So tonight, we will wander through 100 gentle truths about the stones, the soil, and the fiery heart of the world we call home. If you enjoy these quiet journeys into the wonders of science, I invite you to like and subscribe, helping us soothe the world one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, it is time to let go of the day. Sink deeper into your mattress, unclench your jaw, and let your shoulders drop. Let your breath become slow and heavy, matching the ancient stillness of the mountains. Let's begin. Let us begin by turning our minds back to the very start. Our home, this blue marble, began its journey roughly 4.5 billion years ago. It is a number so vast that it is almost impossible for the human mind to truly hold it. Imagine, if you can, a cosmic clock ticking with agonizing slowness in the silence of deep space. Before there were trees to catch the wind, before there were oceans to hold the moon's reflection, before there was even a blue sky, the Earth was simply gathering itself together. It waited patiently in the dark, accumulating matter, slowly knitting itself into existence. It has seen sunrises that lasted for epochs and storms that raged for millennia. There is a deep, grounding comfort in knowing that we rest upon something so incredibly enduring. We live on a foundation that has weathered eons of time, simply to be here, solid and supportive, for us tonight. Before the Earth was a planet, it was a cloud. The world was formed from a nebula, drifting collection of dust and gas left over from the birth of the sun. In that very beginning, we were scattered. Tiny, frozen particles of ancient stars drifted in the void, cold and silent, suspended in the velvet emptiness of space. But slowly, gravity began its gentle, persuasive work. It pulled these wandering specks together, whispering to them to come closer, to bind one to another. It was a chaotic dance that slowly turned into a warm embrace, creating a sphere of wholeness out of the scattered dust. And so, we are, in the most literal and scientific sense, made of stardust that has finally found a place to rest. The atoms in your hand are the same as the atoms that once drifted in the dark, now safe and sound. As the young Earth formed and grew hot, it began to organize itself by weight, a process geologists call differentiation. Imagine a heavy stone sinking slowly through a jar of golden honey. In the early molten days of our planet, the heaviest elements, dense iron and nickel, sank gracefully toward the center to form the core. Meanwhile, the lighter rocks floated upward, drifting like foam on a wave to form the crust we walk upon today. It was a time of great settling, a planetary sigh as everything found its rightful place in the natural order of things. Nature always seeks balance. It finds the perfect equilibrium between the heavy and the light, just as we must balance the heavy thoughts of the day with the lightness of sleep. At the very center of our world, thousands of miles beneath your bed, lies the inner core, a solid sphere of iron. It is as hot as the surface of the sun, yet it remains solid. Despite the unimaginable heat that should melt it, the crushing weight of the entire world resting upon it keeps this iron heart packed tight, unmoving and firm. It is a pearl of stability hidden in the deep dark, a crystal of iron that has not moved for billions of years. It reminds us that even in the center of intense pressure, it is possible to remain solid. It is possible to stay grounded, centered, and still, no matter what weighs upon you. Surrounding that solid center is the outer core, a vast ocean of liquid metal. This is a sea that no ship will ever sail, and no eye will ever see. It is a thick, fluid layer of iron and nickel, flowing in slow, heavy currents around the solid heart of the planet. It moves with a languid, molten rhythm, churning silently in the dark, driven by the heat of the planet's birth. Imagine the sound of heavy waves rolling in slow motion, deep underground, where there is no wind to disturb them. Movement and stillness exist together here. It is a constant, fluid dance happening deep within the soul of the world, a flow that continues even while you sleep. The movement of that liquid metal deep inside the earth creates a magnetic field that stretches far out into space. You cannot see it, but this invisible veil wraps around our planet like a protective blanket. It stands between us and the harsh winds of the sun, quietly deflecting storms we will never feel and radiation we will never see. It creates the aurora, the northern lights that dance in the polar skies, a visible sign of this silent work. It is a guardian, working tirelessly every second of every day to keep our atmosphere calm and safe. Rest easy, knowing that you are protected by forces you cannot see, held safe in a bubble of magnetism created by the gentle spinning of the earth itself. Above the core lies the mantle, a thick, massive layer of rock that makes up the bulk of our planet. While we think of rock as hard and brittle, the mantle is so hot and under such pressure that it moves like thick caramel. It is not quite liquid, but not quite solid. Over millions of years, it flows. It churns in slow-motion convection loops, rising and falling like the breath of a sleeping giant. Rock, given enough time, becomes fluid. It is a reminder that rigidity is just an illusion of the present moment. With enough patience, even the hardest obstacles can soften, flow, and change their shape. The crust. The surface we live on, build our homes on, and sleep on is incredibly thin compared to the rest of the planet. If the Earth were the size of an apple, the crust would be no thicker than the apple's skin. We live our entire lives on this delicate, fragile boundary. Below us is the fiery depth. Above us is the infinite cold of space. And here, in this thin, temperate layer, everything is perfect for us. It is a narrow haven tailored for life, a specific shelter constructed just for us. There is a profound beauty in this fragility. It shows us that it is often the thinnest, most delicate layers that hold the most precious things. The Earth is still cooling down from the violence of its creation billions of years ago. The warmth you feel radiating from the ground on a summer night is not just from the sun. Some of that warmth is ancient heat, a thermal memory of the planet's fiery birth, slowly escaping through the rocks. The Earth is holding on to its warmth, releasing it with agonizing slowness, taking its time to cool over billions of years. It is in no rush to lose its energy. There is no need to rush. Like the Earth, we can take our time to exhale, releasing the heat of the day slowly, gradually, until we are cool and at rest. Geology is not just the study of rocks, it is the study of our origins. Every mineral in your bones, the iron that colors your blood, the water in your cells, it all came from the rocks. The geology of the earth dissolved, shifted, weathered, and transformed to become you. You are not separate from the earth. You are a piece of it that has stood up to look around. You are the crust, the mantle, and the core, given consciousness. So, as you drift off, know that you are returning to your source. You are not just on the earth. You are of the earth, held safely by the very material that made you. Let us turn our attention now to the ground beneath our feet. We often imagine the earth as a solid, unbroken sphere, perfect and smooth like a marble. But in truth, the outer layer of our planet, the lithosphere, is fractured. Imagine a hard-boiled egg that has been gently tapped against a table. The shell is still there, holding its shape, but it is crisscrossed with fine, jagged cracks. These cracks divide the world into massive, rigid sections. We do not live on a single, continuous surface, but rather on a collection of colossal rafts, floating upon the softer, hotter rock below. There is a strange comfort in this imperfection. It suggests that being broken, or having cracks, does not mean falling apart. The earth is cracked, yet it remains whole, holding us safely as it drifts through the dark. These massive fragments of the earth's shell are what we call tectonic plates. If you look at a map of the world, you can almost see where they fit together. The curve of South America looks as if it longs to nestle into the hollow of Africa. These are the pieces of a planetary puzzle, vast slabs of continental rock that carry entire nations, oceans, and mountain ranges on their backs. There are 7 major plates and many smaller ones, all jostling gently for space, bumping shoulders in the slow-motion crowd of the crust. The world is a mosaic. It is a collection of separate pieces that, when viewed from a distance, come together to form a beautiful, unified picture. We tend to think of the ground as motionless, but these massive plates are always on the move. However, their pace is the definition of patience. They drift across the surface of the world at roughly the same speed that your fingernails grow. It is a movement so subtle, so agonizingly slow, that it takes a lifetime to move mere inches. While we rush through our days, running from one task to another, the earth underneath us is taking its time, moving with a slowness that defies our understanding of speed. It teaches us that progress does not have to be fast to be real. You can move forward inch by inch, quietly and invisibly, and still change the entire face of the world. There was a time, long before memory, when all the lands we know were one. Geologists call this supercontinent Pangaea, a word that translates to all Earth. Imagine a world with only one vast island in a single, endless ocean. In that time, you could walk from what is now New York to the deserts of Morocco without ever getting your feet wet. The forests were connected, the rivers flowed into one another, and the planet held its land in a single, massive embrace. We often feel separated by distance and oceans, but deep down, the land remembers that it was once united. Separation is temporary. Connection is the original state of things. But nothing in geology stays still forever. About 200 million years ago, Pangaea began to break apart. It was a slow farewell. A great rift began to open, a tear in the fabric of the land. Heat from below pushed the continents apart, inch by inch, creating the Atlantic Ocean to fill the gap between them. It was not a violent explosion, but a gentle drifting away, like boats unmoored from a dock, carried by the slow tide of the mantle currents below. Sometimes, things must fall apart to create something new. The breaking of the supercontinent gave us the diversity of the world we have today, the distinct beauty of every separate shore. This process of separation is still happening today, deep underwater, in a process called seafloor spreading. In the middle of the oceans, there are great underwater mountain ranges where the Earth is pulling itself apart. As the plates separate, fresh magma rises from the deep to fill the gap. It cools instantly in the crushing darkness of the ocean, creating new rock, new crust, new floor. The Earth is constantly stitching itself back together with fire and stone, expanding the canvas of the world. The planet is perpetually renewing itself. Even in the deepest, darkest places where no light reaches, new ground is being created at every moment. While some plates drift apart, others are destined to meet. When two massive continents collide, they do not shatter, they fold. This is how the greatest mountain ranges are born. The Himalayas, the roof of the world, are the result of India pressing slowly but relentlessly into Asia. It is a car crash happening in extreme slow motion, taking millions of years to unfold. The rock, under immense pressure, has no choice but to rise, crumpling upward to touch the sky. When we face immense pressure, sometimes the only way to go is up. The obstacles in our path can become the mountains that lift us higher than we ever stood before. When an ocean plate meets a continental plate, a different dance occurs. The heavy ocean floor slides gracefully beneath the lighter land, sinking back into the hot mantle below. This is called subduction. It is a process of recycling on a grand scale. The old rock, tired from its journey across the ocean floor, descends into the heat of the earth to be melted down and born again. It is a funeral and a rebirth all at once, a cycle of returning to the source. Nothing is ever truly lost. It simply changes form, sinking down to rest before rising again in another time, in another shape. Around the edges of the Pacific Ocean, there is a horseshoe shape where this tectonic activity is most intense. We call it the Ring of Fire. It is a necklace of volcanoes and deep ocean trenches that traces the boundaries of the Pacific Plate. Here, the Earth is most alive, breathing fire and shaking the ground. It is a reminder of the energy that pulses just beneath the surface, a seam of power that runs through the quiet blue of the ocean. Even in the calmest waters, there is a vibrant energy waiting to be released. The world is not just a sleeping rock. It is a dynamic, living thing with a pulse of fire. Just as the continents drifted apart, they will one day come back together. Geologists project that in the far, distant future, hundreds of millions of years from now, the Pacific Ocean will close and a new supercontinent will form. The isolated lands will drift back into a reunion, creating a new Pangaea, a new all-Earth. The map of the world is not finished. It is simply a snapshot of a moment in time. We are part of a cycle much larger than ourselves. Things come together, they drift apart, and eventually, they find their way back to one another. It is the long, slow heartbeat of the world. As we delve deeper into the story of rocks, we encounter the liquid fire that births them. We give this molten rock two names, depending on where it resides. When it is deep underground,
hidden in the secret, pressurized chambers of the crust. We call it magma. It is the potential of the Earth, waiting in the dark. But the moment it breaks the surface, spilling out into the open air or the cool ocean, it is christened lava. It is the same substance, yet the journey from the depths to the light changes its identity completely. It reminds us that we, too, are defined not just by what we are made of, but by where we are. Emerging into the light can be a transformative act, giving us a new name and a new purpose. When this liquid rock begins to cool, it transforms into solid stone through a process called crystallization. Imagine water freezing into ice on a winter window pane, forming delicate, branching patterns. Molten rock does the same, but with minerals. As the heat fades, atoms that were once dancing wildly begin to slow down. They reach out and lock hands, arranging themselves into orderly, geometric patterns. It is a transition from the chaos of fluid heat to the perfect order of a solid crystal structure. Order naturally emerges from chaos if given enough time. When the heat of the moment passes, everything settles into a structure that is strong and lasting. Some rocks, known as intrusive igneous rocks, are born from magma that never reaches the surface. They cool deep underground, insulated by the warm blanket of the earth. Granite is the most famous of these. Because it cools so slowly, over thousands or even millions of years, its crystals have ample time to grow large and strong. If you look closely at a piece of granite, you can see the speckled interlocking grains of quartz, feldspar, and mica. It is a salt and pepper mosaic that was crafted in total darkness, a testament to the power of taking one's time. True strength is often forged in silence and slowness. The things that take the longest to mature often become the most unbreakable foundations of our lives. In contrast, when lava erupts onto the surface, it meets the shock of the cold air or the freezing ocean. It cools rapidly, in a matter of days or weeks. This creates extrusive rock like basalt. Because it freezes so quickly, the crystals inside do not have time to grow. They remain microscopic, creating a rock that is fine-grained, dark and smooth. Basalt makes up the vast majority of the ocean floor, a heavy, dark blanket that paved the world in a hurry. There is a beauty in decisiveness, too. Sometimes, we must adapt quickly to a new environment, becoming smooth and resilient to face the world. Sometimes, the cooling happens so instantly that nature creates something rare: obsidian. If lava with a specific chemistry is thrown suddenly into cold water, it freezes in a heartbeat. The atoms are trapped in place before they can even attempt to form a crystal structure. The result is volcanic glass, black, glossy, and impossibly sharp. It is a rock without a grain, a frozen moment of liquid chaos, captured forever in a solid form. It serves as a mirror from the deep earth. Even the wildest, most fluid emotions can be captured and stilled, turning into something smooth, reflective, and beautiful.
Not all volcanic rocks are heavy. There is a stone called pumice that is so light it can float on water. When a volcano erupts with great violence, it can whip the lava into a froth, mixing it with gas and steam. It is like the foam on a cappuccino. When this frothy mix cools and hardens, it traps millions of tiny bubbles inside the stone. Pumice is a rock that is filled with air, a solid object that has refused to be weighed down by its own substance. It teaches us that we can be solid and real without being heavy. We can hold on to the air, the lightness, and stay afloat even in the deepest waters. Beneath every volcano, there sits a reservoir known as a magma chamber.
This is the waiting room of the underworld. It is a vast cavern in the crust where molten rock gathers, swelling and pooling as it rises from the mantle. It can sit there for centuries, simmering quietly, building pressure, waiting for the opportune moment to rise. It is the heart of the volcano, the hidden source of all the power that will eventually reshape the landscape above. We all have a deep reserve within you, a chamber of energy and potential that we store up, waiting for the right moment to release it and change our world. Not all volcanoes are explosive mountains of fire. Some, like the great volcanoes of Hawaii, are called shield volcanoes. They are named for their shape, which resembles a warrior's shield laid down on the ground. Broad, low, and gently sloping. These volcanoes are formed by fluid, runny lava that flows easily, traveling great distances before it cools. They do not explode with anger. They simply pour out their contents, layer upon gentle layer, building the land slowly and steadily. There is immense power in gentleness. You do not need to be explosive to be great. You can expand your influence by flowing freely, covering the ground with warmth and persistence. Then there are the stratovolcanoes, the tall, majestic cones like Mount Fuji or Mount Rainier. These are built from alternating layers of ash and lava, a history of their past temperaments. They are famous for their long periods of sleep. They can stand silent and snow-capped for generations, looking like peaceful sentinels watching over the valleys. They are masters of dormancy, conserving their energy for eons between their moments of activity. Rest is a crucial part of existence. Even the mightiest forces on Earth spend most of their time sleeping, gathering strength in the quiet moments between events. While we often view volcanoes as destructive, they are actually the great givers of life. Volcanic ash is rich in minerals and nutrients pulled from the deep earth. Once the fire has cooled and the ash has settled, it breaks down to form some of the most fertile soil on the planet. Vineyards, forests, and civilizations have always flocked to the slopes of volcanoes because the land there gives so much back. The fire destroys, yes, but it also prepares the way for a greener, more vibrant future. Out of the ashes, new life always rises. What feels like a destructive end is often just the burning away of the old to make the soil rich for a new beginning. We leave the fire now and turn toward the water. The second great family of rocks is known as sedimentary rock. While igneous rocks are born from violent heat, sedimentary rocks are born from patience. They are formed not by melting, but by gathering. They are the collectors of the world. Every grain of sand, every speck of dust, and every fragment of shell that settles on the bottom of a lake or ocean is a potential piece of the future stone. The earth creates these rocks by simply letting things rest, layer upon layer, until the weight of the accumulation becomes a new solid form. It is a testament to the power of gathering. Small, insignificant things, when brought together and given time, can build something as strong as a mountain. Before a new rock can be made, an old rock must be broken. This process is called weathering. It is the Earth's way of softening its own edges. Rain, wind, and the gentle touch of flowing water slowly wear down the mighty mountains. A granite peak, jagged and proud, is slowly dismantled, grain by grain, over millions of years. It crumbles into sand and clay, releasing its grip on the sky to return to the earth below. There is no failure in falling apart. It is simply the necessary first step in becoming something else. To build the new, we must be willing to let go of the old form. Once the rock is broken into small grains, the water takes it on a journey. Rivers are the great conveyor belts of the planet. They carry the silt, the mud, and the sand from the high peaks down toward the sea. Listen, and you can hear the faint, scratching sound of stones rolling along the riverbed, tumbling over one another, smoothing their rough edges as they travel. It is a long, winding pilgrimage from the heights of the mountains to the depth of the ocean. We are all carried by the current of time. Sometimes, the best thing to do is stop fighting the flow and let the river take us where we need to go. Eventually, the water slows down. When a river meets a lake or the vast ocean, it loses its energy, and the sediments it carries begin to sink. This is called deposition. Imagine a cloud of dust slowly settling in a sunbeam, but underwater. The heavy stones drop first, then the sand, and finally, days or weeks later, the finest mud settles gently to the bottom. It creates a soft, thick blanket over the ocean floor, burying the past in a layer of quiet darkness. There is a time for movement and a time for stillness. After the long journey, it is good to simply stop, to sink down, and to rest at the bottom of the world. How does loose sand become hard rock? It happens through a process called lithification. As layers pile up, the weight of the new sediments presses down on the old ones. It is a slow, heavy hug that squeezes the water out. At the same time, minerals dissolved in the groundwater act like a natural glue, cementing the grains together. The loose, shifting sand is bound tight, locking into a permanent embrace. What was once a drifting beach becomes a solid wall of sandstone. Pressure does not just weigh us down, it holds us together. It creates bonds that turn our scattered experiences into a solid, unbreakable character. Because sedimentary rocks are laid down in layers, they act like the pages of a great book. Geologists call these layers strata. If you look at a canyon wall, you can see the stripes of colored tan, white, and gray. Each stripe is a captured era of time. The bottom red layer might be an ancient desert, the gray layer above it, a vanished ocean. Reading these layers is like reading the diary of the planet, preserving moments that passed millions of years ago. Our lives are built in layers too. We are the sum of all our past days, stacked one on top of the other, creating the colorful, complex pattern of who we are today. One of the most beautiful sedimentary rocks is sandstone. It feels gritty to the touch, like sugar. This rock is often nothing more than an ancient desert or a prehistoric beach that has been frozen in time. The wind-blown dunes of the Jurassic period, which once shifted under the feet of dinosaurs, are now locked in place, forming the red rock arches of the American West. The wind has stopped blowing, but the shape of the wind remains. Nothing is ever truly gone. The sunny days of the past, the warmth of ancient summers, are stored deep within the stone, waiting to be remembered. There is a rock that is made almost entirely of living things. Limestone. It forms in warm, shallow tropical seas. It is built from the crushed shells, coral reefs, and microscopic skeletons of sea creatures that lived eons ago. They pull calcium from the water to build their homes, and when they pass, their shells settle to the bottom. Over time, these billions of tiny lives compress to form the white cliffs of Dover, or the gray stones of the pyramids. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before. The ground itself is made of the lives of the past, a foundation built by the collective effort of billions of tiny beings. In the deepest, stillest waters, where the current is almost non-existent, we find the birthplace of shale. This rock is made of the finest mud and clay. Because the particles are so small, they pack together incredibly tightly, forming thin, flat sheets of rock that break easily into flakes. It is the rock of silence. It only forms where the water is perfectly calm, undisturbed by waves or storms, allowing the finest dust to settle. To create something delicate and refined, we need stillness. It is in the quietest moments, away from the storms of life, that our finest thoughts can finally settle. There is a simple, beautiful rule in geology called the law of superposition. It states that in an undisturbed sequence of rocks, the oldest layers are at the bottom and the youngest are at the top. It is the logic of gravity. The foundation must be laid before the roof. When you look at a cliff face, you are looking at a timeline, with the deep past anchoring the bottom and the present moment resting lightly on the summit. It is a reminder to respect your foundations, your past, your childhood, your early memories. They are the deep layers that hold you up. They are the base upon which the present moment stands. We have seen rocks born from fire and rocks born from water. Now, we arrive at the third and final family, metamorphic rock. The word metamorphosis comes from the ancient Greek, meaning change of form. It is the same word we use for the caterpillar turning into a butterfly. These are rocks that began their lives as something else, perhaps a piece of granite or a chunk of limestone, but were forced to change. They were not melted, and they were not broken. Instead, they were subjected to conditions so intense that they had no choice but to transform. It teaches us that we are never truly finished. No matter who we are or where we started, there is always the potential for a complete reinvention, a chance to become something entirely new. One of the primary agents of this change is heat. Deep beneath the surface, the temperature rises. But in metamorphism, the heat must be precise. It must be hot enough to soften the rock, to make it pliable and yielding, but not hot enough to melt it back into magma. It is a gentle baking, a slow roasting that allows the atoms within the stone to unlock from their rigid positions and migrate. They move through the solid rock, rearranging themselves into new, more stable patterns without ever turning to liquid. Warmth allows for flexibility. When we are held in a warm, safe environment, we too can soften our rigid edges and find a new way to be, without falling apart completely. The partner to heat is pressure. Imagine the weight of a mountain range resting on your shoulders. Deep in the crust, rocks are squeezed by thousands of tons of stone above them. This confining pressure presses in from all sides, closing every tiny pore, crushing every empty space. The rock becomes denser, tighter, and more compact. It is no longer loose or airy. It is a solid, unified mass that has learned to thrive under the weight of the world. Pressure does not have to destroy us. Sometimes the heavy burdens we carry are exactly what we need to become more solid, more grounded, and more substantial. Let us look at a specific transformation: the birth of marble. Marble begins its life as humble limestone, a rough biological rock made of old shells and coral.
But when limestone is buried and heated, the fossils dissolve. The chaotic texture disappears. The calcite crystals grow and fuse together, creating a stone that is uniform, smooth, and gleaming white. It becomes the stone of statues, the perfect canvas for the sculptor's chisel. It is a process of refinement. The rough, uneven details of the past are smoothed away, leaving behind something pure, clean, and beautiful. Another transformation occurs with slate. This rock begins as shale-soft, fragile mud that breaks easily in your hands. But when that mud is subjected to low-grade pressure over millions of years, it hardens. It aligns its particles so perfectly that it can be split into thin, incredibly strong sheets. We use it for roof tiles and chalkboards because it is durable and waterproof. The mud that once washed away in the rain has become the shield that protects us from it. Softness can become strength. The most fragile parts of ourselves, given time and experience, can become our strongest armor. When the pressure is uneven, pushing harder from one side than the other, the rock develops a texture called foliation. Imagine a handful of mixed coins. If you squeeze them, they will all turn to face the same way, lying flat against each other. Minerals do the same thing. They rotate and lengthen, lining up perpendicular to the stress to relieve the pressure. This creates beautiful wavy bands or stripes in the rock, a visible record of the direction of the force. This is the wisdom of alignment. When we face stress from a certain direction, we do not need to break. We simply need to reorient ourselves, finding the path of least resistance. If the pressure becomes extreme, we get a rock called gneiss. In this intense environment, the minerals not only align, they separate. The dark minerals clump together and the light minerals clump together, creating distinct black and white bands that look like the stripes of a zebra. It is a rock that has been sorted by stress, achieving a high contrast clarity that the original rock never had. Sometimes, intense situations bring clarity. They help us separate the light from the dark, showing us clearly what is essential and what is not. We rarely see metamorphic rocks forming because the process happens deep in the roots of mountains. 10 or 20 miles down, beneath the Himalayas or the Alps, the rocks are currently twisting and changing in the dark. We only see them millions of years later, after the mountains have been worn down by wind and rain, exposing the transformed heart that was once hidden. The surface may look still, but deep down, the foundation is always reacting. The most important changes happen in the dark, where no one can see. The work you do on yourself in private, deep within your own mind, is what eventually is revealed to the world. There is a localized type of change called contact metamorphism. This happens when a vein of hot magma shoots up through cold rock. The magma does not melt the surrounding stone, but it bakes it. There is a halo or a ring of changed rock around the magma tunnel. The rock closest to the heat is changed the most, while the rock further away remains untouched. We are shaped by who we are close to. Like the stone, we are warmed and transformed by the presence of those we let into our lives. Proximity is a powerful force of change. This brings us to the grand concept of the rock cycle. No rock is ever final. An igneous rock can be eroded into sand to become sedimentary. That sedimentary rock can be buried and pressurized to become metamorphic. That metamorphic rock can sink deeper, melt, and become magma, starting the cycle all over again. The Earth is a giant recycling machine, endlessly repurposing its own material. There is no end, only becoming. We are not static statues, but flowing processes, constantly cycling through different states of being, always ready for the next transformation. We have spoken of the forces that build the land up, volcanoes that pile ash into the sky, and tectonic plates that fold the crust into high peaks. Now, we must speak of the opposing force, the force that brings it all back down: erosion.
It is the great leveler of the world. It is a process that operates with infinite patience, slowly dismantling the high places and filling in the low places. It does not use explosions or sudden shifts. It uses the gentle friction of wind, water, and ice. It is the Earth's way of sighing, of letting the tension of height dissolve back into the comfort of the flat plains. There is a humility in this process. It reminds us that no matter how high we climb, gravity and time will eventually bring everything back to a state of balance and rest. Consider the humble raindrop. Individually, it is nothing, a splash of water that vanishes in a moment. But collectively, rain is the most powerful hammer on the planet. When a raindrop strikes the bare earth, it acts like a tiny explosion, dislodging particles of soil and stone. Over millions of years, these billions of tiny taps can wear away the sharpest mountain range. It is the definition of persistence. The water is soft and the rock is hard, but the water always wins in the end. Gentleness, repeated often enough, becomes a force that nothing can withstand. You do not need to be hard to make an impact. You simply need to keep showing up. When the rain gathers together, it forms rivers, the master sculptors of the landscape. Think of the Grand Canyon. It is a vast, gaping wound in the earth, a mile deep and miles wide. Yet it was carved by a single river, the Colorado, simply flowing day after day for 6 million years. The river did not try to cut the rock. It merely followed the path of gravity, washing away one grain of sand at a time. The depth of the canyon is a measure of the river's focus. Great things are achieved not by sudden, massive effort, but by the daily dedication to a single path. If you keep flowing in your direction, you will eventually cut through the hardest obstacles. Rivers rarely flow in a straight line. They love to meander. As a river flows across a flat plain, it begins to curve, swinging from side to side in great, lazy loops. It erodes the outer bank and drops sand on the inner bank, exaggerating the curve more and more over time. It looks like a ribbon unspooling on the floor. The water is in no hurry to reach the sea. It takes the scenic route, exploring the width of the valley, turning back on itself as if to enjoy the journey. Efficiency is not the only goal. Sometimes the beauty of life is found in the detour, in the winding path that takes longer, but allows you to touch more of the world. When a river finally reaches the ocean, it slows down completely and drops everything it has been carrying. This creates a delta. Named after the Greek letter triangle, it is a fan-shaped deposit of rich, fertile mud that extends out into the sea. It is the river's final gift to the world. The land that was taken from the mountains is given back here, creating new territory, new marshes, and new homes for life, where there was once only open water. The journey ends, not with a stop, but with an offering. We carry our experiences with us for a long time, but eventually there comes a time to release them. In letting go of our burdens, we create fertile ground for something new to grow. Water is not the only sculptor. The wind also shapes the world. In the dry, silent deserts, where there is no water to bind the soil, the wind picks up fine grains of dust and carries them across continents. It is an invisible chisel, scrubbing the face of the rock. It seeks out the soft spots, the weak layers, and wears them away, leaving the harder rock standing in strange, beautiful shapes. Mushrooms of stone and delicate arches that frame the sky. We are shaped by invisible forces, the culture around us, the words of others, the spirit of the times. We cannot see them, but if we look at who we have become, we can see the beautiful shape they have carved into our character. The wind moves sand through a process called saltation, which means dancing.
Sand grains are too heavy to float in the air like dust. Instead, they bounce. One grain is lifted by the wind, curves through the air and strikes the ground, knocking another grain into the air. It is a chain reaction of skipping stones, a low, shifting cloud of sand that ripples across the dunes. It creates the beautiful, rhythmic waves you see on the surface of a desert, patterns that look like a frozen sea. Even in the driest places, there is a rhythm. Life, like the sand, moves in a dance of cause and effect, one action gently sparking the next. At the edge of the world, where the land meets the sea, we find the waves. Waves are the pulse of the ocean, the transfer of energy from the wind to the water. They travel thousands of miles across the open sea, carrying energy without carrying the water itself. When they finally meet the shore, they release that energy in a crash of white foam. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic sound that has been beating against the continents since the oceans first formed. It is the heartbeat of the planet. There is a deep comfort in repetition. Like the waves, our breath, our sleep, and our days follow a cycle of rising and falling, a rhythm that sustains us. Sometimes, the waves carve out a piece of land, leaving it isolated in the sea. This is a sea stack. Imagine a headland protruding into the ocean. The waves attack its sides, carving caves that eventually meet to form an arch. When the roof of the arch collapses, a tall pillar of rock is left standing alone in the water. It stands there, battered by the spray, a lonely sentinel that refuses to fall. It is a monument to endurance, holding its ground even when the connection to the mainland is lost. Solitude can be a sign of strength. To stand alone, surrounded by the wild energy of the world, is to prove that your foundation is your own. The goal of all erosion is something geologists call base level. Every river, every wind, and every landslide is trying to bring the land down to the level of the sea. If the earth stopped moving, if the plates stopped clashing, eventually the whole world would be worn flat. It would be a calm, featureless plain, perfectly smooth and at rest. It is the theoretical end of all geological struggle, a state of perfect, low-energy peace. We are all seeking our own base level, a place where the struggle against gravity ends, where we no longer need to climb or fight, but can simply spread out, relax, and be at peace with the horizon. If rocks are the cakes, then minerals are the ingredients. A rock, like granite, is a mixture of physical gathering of different materials. But a mineral is a pure substance. It has a specific chemical recipe that never changes, defined by nature itself. Whether you find a piece of quartz in the mountains of Switzerland or in the sands of Brazil, it is exactly the same deep down. It is a promise of consistency in a chaotic universe. There is a profound comfort in reliability. In a world that is always shifting and changing, there are fundamental truths, basic building blocks, that remain pure and consistent no matter where you go. What makes a crystal is not its shiny exterior, but its internal order. If you could shrink yourself down to the size of an atom and step inside a mineral, you would see a perfect, repeating pattern extending in all directions. This is called the crystal lattice. The atoms are not jumbled together. They are arranged in a precise, three-dimensional grid, like soldiers standing in formation or dancers paused in a perfect pose. The outward shape of the crystal, the sharp points and flat faces, is simply the visible expression of this inner order. True beauty comes from within. The external shape of our lives is often just a reflection of the internal order, the habits and values we hold deep inside where no one can see. For a crystal to grow large and perfect, it needs two things: time and space. Most minerals in the earth are cramped. They grow tightly against their neighbors, fighting for room, resulting in a mass of interlocking grains with no distinct shape. But if a crystal finds a hollow pocket cavity in the rock where it can grow freely without touching anything else, it will form perfect, sharp, geometric faces. It expands into the emptiness, becoming the truest version of itself. To become who we are truly meant to be, we often need a little space. We need room to breathe, to expand, and to grow without the constant pressure of the crowd pressing in on us. The most common mineral in the surface of the continents is quartz. You have likely held it in your hand, cool, hard, and often transparent. It is made of silica, the same material as glass. Quartz is the great survivor of the mineral world. When granite mountains crumble and other minerals dissolve into clay, quartz remains. It is hard and chemically resistant. It survives the journey down the river to become the white sand on the beach. It is the memory of the mountain, enduring long after the mountain is gone. Clarity and toughness can coexist. You can be transparent, open, and clear, while still being strong enough to weather the longest journeys. While quartz is common, the feldspar family is the bedrock of the crust. There is a specific type called labradorite that holds a secret. At first glance, it looks like a dull, gray stone. But if you turn it in the light, just so, it flashes with a brilliant, iridescent blue or gold. This is called labradorescence. It is caused by light scattering off microscopic layers deep inside the stone. The beauty is not on the surface. It is waiting for the right angle of light to reveal it. Do not judge by the first dull glance. Everyone has a hidden iridescence, a flash of brilliant color that reveals itself only when you take the time to look at them in the right light. Some minerals, like mica, have a structure that allows them to peel. If you look at a piece of mica, it looks like a block of black or silver plastic. But if you use your fingernail, you can peel off a layer as thin as paper, and then another, and another. This is because the atomic bonds are strong in two directions, but weak in the third. It forms perfect, flexible sheets that are heat-resistant and shimmering. It protects by being able to separate without breaking. Sometimes, flexibility is the best defense. Being able to come apart in layers, to shed the outer skin while keeping the core intact, is a unique kind of strength. We often prize gems for their purity, but it is often the impurities that give them their beauty. Consider the mineral corundum. In its pure form, it is clear and colorless. But if a few atoms of chromium sneak into the crystal lattice during its growth, the stone turns a deep, vibrant red. We call that a ruby. If a few atoms of titanium and iron enter instead, the stone turns a deep, celestial blue. We call that a sapphire. The difference between these precious gems is just a tiny mistake in the chemistry. What we perceive as a flaw is often what gives us our character. It is our unique impurities, our quirks and distinct experiences that turn us from something plain into something precious. One of nature's most delightful surprises is the geode. From the outside, it looks like a potato, a round, lumpy, unassuming rock covered in dirt. You might kick it aside on a hike without a second thought. But if you crack it open, you find that it is hollow, lined with a sparkling city of purple amethyst or white quartz crystals. These crystals grew secretly in the dark, inside a gas bubble trapped in ancient lava. It is a reminder to never underestimate the unassuming. A rough, plain exterior can protect a dazzling inner life that has been growing quietly, beautifully, in the dark. Even the humble salt on your table is a crystal with a story. Its mineral name is halite. If you look at salt under a microscope, you will see that every grain is a perfect little cube. This is because the sodium and chlorine atoms that make it up bond at distinct 90-degree angles. When ancient oceans evaporated, they left behind vast beds of this salt, miles thick, buried underground. We mine it today to taste the flavor of a sea that vanished millions of years ago. Nature loves geometry. Even in the most ordinary things, there is a perfect mathematical order waiting to be discovered. We cannot leave the crystal kingdom without speaking of the diamond. It is made of carbon, the same common element that makes up the graphite in your pencil or the charcoal in your grill. The only difference is pressure. Diamonds are born deeper than almost any other mineral, nearly 100 miles down in the crushing grip of the mantle. Under this immense weight, the carbon atoms are forced to bond in a super-strong tetrahedral structure, creating the hardest natural substance known to man. Endurance creates brilliance. The pressures that feel like they are crushing you are actually forging you into something unbreakable, clear, and precious. We enter now the quiet library of the earth, where the history of life is written in stone. We call these records fossils. But it is important to understand that a fossil is rarely the original bone or shell. Over millions of years, groundwater rich in minerals seeps into the buried remains. Atom by atom, the calcium of the bone is dissolved and replaced by rock silica, calcite, or pyrite. What is left is a perfect stone copy, a statue created by nature that preserves the exact shape of the life that once was. It is a form of immortality. We are remembered not necessarily by the substance of who we are, but by the shape we leave behind, the impression we make on the world that hardens after we are gone. Becoming a fossil is an incredibly rare miracle. For the vast majority of life that has ever existed on this planet, there is no record. Most things simply return to the earth, decomposing and vanishing without a trace. To become a fossil, a creature must be buried rapidly, perhaps by a mudslide or a sandstorm, protected instantly from the wind and the rain. It is a 1 in a billion chance, a lucky ticket in the lottery of deep time. This rarity makes every fossil precious. It reminds us that memory is a gift, not a guarantee. To be remembered,
To be preserved against the flow of time is a special grace. One of the most beautiful forms of fossilization is petrified wood. Imagine an ancient forest buried suddenly by volcanic ash. The trees do not rot. Instead, groundwater carrying dissolved silica, the stuff of quartz, soaks into the wood. The silica fills the tiny cells of the tree, hardening into agate and opal. The wood is gone, but the structure remains. You can still count the tree rings. You can still see the texture of the bark, but it is now cold, hard, and sparkling with color. It teaches us that the essence of a thing can survive even if the material changes. The pattern of your life, the rings of your growth, can endure long after the years themselves have passed. Not all fossils are stone. Some are trapped in amber. Amber begins as sticky resin, bleeding from the bark of ancient pine trees. It is the tree's way of healing a wound. Sometimes a small insect, a seed, or a bubble of air gets caught in this golden syrup. Over millions of years, the resin hardens into a gem, preserving the life inside with perfect clarity. It is a three-dimensional window into a world that vanished long ago, bathed in a warm, honey-colored light. It is a beautiful metaphor for healing. The very thing the tree produced to protect itself became a vessel to protect something else, keeping a moment of the past safe forever. Sometimes we do not find the body of the animal, but only the mark it left behind. These are called trace fossils. Imagine a dinosaur walking along a muddy beach at low tide. The sun bakes the mud hard, preserving the deep footprints. Later, sand fills the holes, casting a mold of the step. Millions of years later, we find the footprint, a frozen moment of movement. We see where the creature walked, where it paused, and where it turned. We are not just our bodies. We are our actions. The steps we take, the paths we choose to walk, leave a mark on the world that can last far longer than we do. Geologists use specific fossils, called index fossils, to tell time. There were certain creatures, like the trilobite, that lived all over the world, but only for a specific short window of time. When geologists find a rock full of trilobites, they know exactly how old that rock is. These humble creatures serve as the page numbers in the book of the earth, helping us orient ourselves in the vast, confusing narrative of history. We are all children of our time. We define the era we live in, and in turn, the era defines us. We are the markers of this specific moment in the story of the world. One of the most humbling experiences in geology is finding a seashell at the top of a mountain. If you climb the Himalayas, the highest peaks on Earth, you can find fossils of ancient marine creatures embedded in the summit rocks. These stones were once the muddy floor of a warm, shallow ocean. The tectonic power of the Earth lifted the ocean floor up to brush the stars. It is a journey of elevation that took 50 million years. Nothing is permanent. The lowest places can be lifted to the greatest heights. The ocean can become the mountain. Potential for greatness lies dormant in even the lowest, deepest places. We must not forget the microscopic life. Coal and oil, the fuels of our modern world, are technically fossils. Coal is the fossilized remains of ancient swamps, massive ferns, and trees that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. They soaked up the energy of the prehistoric sun, and when they died, they took that energy down into the dark earth. Today, when we burn coal, we are releasing the light of a sun that shone on a world before humans existed. Energy is never lost. The warmth of the past is stored away, waiting for the future to uncover it and release it again. Despite all we have found, The fossil record is famously incomplete. It is like a library where most of the books have burned down and the remaining books have missing pages. We have only snapshots of the history of life, brief glimpses illuminated by the flashlight of discovery. There are vast stretches of time where we simply do not know what happened. The silence is as much a part of the story as the noise. We do not need to know everything to appreciate the beauty of the story. The mystery, the gaps, and the unknown parts allow us to wonder, to dream, and to fill in the silence with our imagination. The fossil record shows us that life has faced at least 5 mass extinctions. These are times when the vast majority of life was wiped out, often by asteroids or volcanic winters. It sounds tragic, and it is. But in the rock record, these black lines of death are always followed immediately by an explosion of new life. The extinction of the dinosaurs cleared the way for the rise of mammals. The end of one chapter is the absolute condition for the beginning of the next. Endings are not failures. They are clearings. They are the forest fire that cracks open the seeds of the pine, allowing the new forest to rise. We lift our eyes now to the mountains, the cathedrals of the natural world. To understand how mountains are made, imagine a rug lying flat on a wooden floor. If you push the rug from both sides, it buckles. It wrinkles upward, creating folds and ridges. This is exactly what happens to the Earth's crust. When two tectonic plates collide, neither wants to give way. The rock, caught in the middle, has no choice but to buckle. It crumples, bends, and breaks, thrusting slowly upward into the sky. The mighty Alps, or the Himalayas, are simply the result of the Earth folding in on itself. Conflict creates elevation. When two great forces meet and refuse to yield, the only way to go is up. The pressure that feels like it is crushing you is actually lifting you higher. When we look at a mountain, we are seeing only a fraction of its true size. Just as an iceberg floats in the water with most of its mass below the surface, a mountain floats on the mantle. This is a principle called isostasy. For every 1,000 feet of rock that towers into the sky, there is a root of rock extending miles deep into the earth to support it. The higher the peak, the deeper the foundation must be. The mountain is not just sitting on top of the crust. It is anchored deep within it, balanced perfectly by its own weight. To stand tall, you must be deep. You cannot reach for the heights without first anchoring yourself firmly in the depths. The visible success is always supported by invisible, hidden work. As we climb higher, the world changes. The air becomes thin. The pressure drops. The blanket of the atmosphere, which hugs the surface of the planet, begins to fray at the edges. Up here, there is less oxygen to breathe and less atmosphere to hold the heat. The noise of the world below fades away, swallowed by the distance. It is a realm of stark clarity and biting cold. The higher you go, the more the unnecessary things, the warmth, the noise, the clutter, are stripped away. There is a solitude in high places. It is colder, yes, but it is also clearer. Sometimes we must distance ourselves from the warmth of the crowd to see the world as it truly is. In the highest valleys, where the snow never melts, we find the glaciers.
These are rivers of ice. They are formed when snow falls year after year, compressing the layers beneath it until they turn into dense blue ice. And though it seems solid, the ice flows. Driven by gravity, the glacier creeps slowly down the mountain, sliding inches per day. It groans and creaks, a slow-moving beast of frozen water that reshapes everything in its path. It is a force that is both solid and fluid, hard yet yielding. You can be firm and still move. You can be solid in your convictions and yet flow forward, adapting to the path before you with a slow, unstoppable momentum. Water cuts, but ice carves. When a river flows through a valley, it cuts a sharp V shape, like a knife slice. But when a glacier moves through a valley, it acts like a giant scoop. It widens the valley floor and steepens the walls, turning the V into a broad, majestic U shape. When the ice finally melts, it leaves behind a wide, open space, a valley that feels vast and empty, filled only with the echo of the wind. Sometimes, a heavy burden passes through our lives like a glacier. It creates pressure and weight, but when it is gone, it leaves behind a wide, open space, a capacity to hold more than we ever could before. As a glacier moves, it acts as a conveyor belt, carrying rocks and debris along with it. When the ice stops and melts, it drops this load in a pile called a moraine. These are ridges of stone that mark the furthest point the glacier traveled. They are the footprints of the ice, physical memories of a winter that happened thousands of years ago. You can look at a green, sunny meadow today and see these piles of grey stone, telling you that once, this place was buried under a mile of ice. We leave markers of how far we have come. The struggles of our past leave debris behind, not as trash, but as monuments to our endurance, marking the point where the cold finally stopped. Mountains are so massive that they can control the weather. When moist air from the ocean meets a mountain range, it is forced to rise. As it rises, it cools and drops its rain on the windward side. By the time the air crosses the peak and flows down the other side, it is dry. This creates a rain shadow, a desert hiding behind the mountain. One side of the range is lush and green. The other is arid and brown. The mountain stands as a gatekeeper, deciding where the water will fall. A barrier can be a protector or a depriving force, depending on where you stand. The same obstacle that casts a shadow for one person provides shelter for another. You can tell the age of a mountain by its shape. Young mountains, like the Rockies or the Alps, are jagged, sharp, and threatening. They pierce the sky with broken points, having been raised recently and violently. Old mountains, like the Appalachians, are soft, rolling, and green. Time and erosion have worn down their sharp edges, turning peaks into gentle hills. They are not weaker, they are simply more settled, more at peace with the sky. Aging brings a softening. The sharp, jagged edges of our youth eventually wear down into a gentle, rolling wisdom. We do not become less, we simply become easier to climb. While mountains seem dry and rocky, they are actually the water towers of the world. In the winter, they hoard the moisture of the sky, locking it away in deep banks of snow and ice. They hold this treasure tight. Then, as the spring sun warms the earth, the mountains slowly release their wealth. The melting snow feeds the streams, which feed the rivers, which water the farms and cities thousands of miles away. The mountain serves the world by holding on, and then by letting go.
True wealth is not just in gathering, but in the timing of the release. We gather strength and resources not just for ourselves, but to release them slowly into the world when the season is right. At the very limits of life, on the exposed, wind-blasted rocks of the summit, we find lichen. It is not a plant, but a partnership. It is a fungus and an algae living together in a symbiotic embrace. The fungus provides the structure and protection from the wind. The algae uses the sun to make food. Alone, neither could survive the harsh conditions of the high peaks. Together, they can live on bare rock, enduring freezing cold and scorching sun for centuries. Even in the harshest environments, connection is the key to survival. When we have nothing else, we have each other. A partnership can turn a barren rock into a home. As we near the end of our journey, we step back to see the whole system moving together. Consider the water cycle. The water you drink today is the same water that rained down on the dinosaurs. It is a closed loop, an eternal circle of renewal. It evaporates from the warm oceans, rises to become clouds, falls as rain on the mountains, and flows back to the sea. It changes form, from vapor to liquid to ice, but it never leaves us. It is the lifeblood of the planet, circulating forever in a rhythm of rising and falling. Nothing is ever truly lost. The energy and love we pour out into the world always finds a way to flow back to us, returning in a different form at a different time. We often treat the ground as dirt, but soil is actually a living miracle. It is the thin, vibrant bridge between the dead rock below and the living air above. It is a mixture of crushed stone, decaying leaves, water, air, and billions of microscopic organisms. It takes centuries to build just 1 inch of topsoil. It is a complex, fragile skin that filters our water and grows our food. It is the earth's way of softening the hard reality of stone to make it hospitable for life. To be fruitful, we must be a mixture. We need the hardness of discipline, the rock, mixed with the softness of compassion, the organic, creating a rich soil where new ideas can grow. If you look at a graph of the Earth's atmosphere over a year, it looks like a wave. This is the Earth breathing. In the spring and summer, the vast forests of the Northern Hemisphere inhale, pulling carbon dioxide out of the air to grow leaves. In the autumn, as the leaves fall and decay, the Earth exhales, releasing the carbon back. It is a slow, deep breath that takes 12 months to complete. In and out. In and out. The planet itself follows the rhythm of respiration. We are part of this rhythm. Just as the planet needs a season to inhale and a season to exhale, we too need times of activity and times of rest. We cannot hold our breath forever. The Earth does not dance alone. It is locked in a gravitational embrace with the moon, creating the tides. Twice a day, the ocean bulges outward, reaching toward the moon as it passes overhead. This massive movement of water scours the coastlines, cleans the estuaries, and stirs the deep oceans. It is a heartbeat that has been pumping for billions of years, driven by a celestial companion thousands of miles away. The Earth is constantly moved by something it cannot touch. We are all moved by distant forces. The people we love, even when they are far away, exert a gentle pull on our tides, keeping our emotional oceans in motion. The Earth's rotation is not perfectly steady. It wobbles slowly like a spinning top. This is known as a Milankovitch cycle. Over tens of thousands of years, The angle of the Earth tilts back and forth. This subtle nod changes how much sunlight hits the poles, triggering the start and end of ice ages. It is a movement so slow it is imperceptible to us, yet it dictates the climate of the entire world. It reminds us that even the smallest shift in angle, given enough time, can change everything. You do not need to make massive changes to alter your life. A small shift in perspective, maintained over time, can lead to a completely different season. We think of north as a fixed point, but the magnetic North Pole is always moving. The liquid iron in the core is restless, and as it churns, the magnetic pole wanders. Currently, it is drifting from Canada towards Siberia. Every few 100,000 years, the poles actually flip completely. North becomes south, and south becomes north. The rock records these flips,
showing that the Earth is not rigid in its orientation. It is willing to completely reverse itself to maintain balance. Flexibility is a survival skill. When the internal pressure changes, we must be willing to adjust our compass, to let our north shift so that we can stay true to ourselves. The face of the Earth is pockmarked with craters from ancient meteors, but most are hard to find. This is because the Earth has a superpower: erosion and renewal. Unlike the Moon, which keeps every scar forever, the Earth heals. Wind, rain, and vegetation work tirelessly to soften the edges of the impact, filling the crater with water to form a lake or covering it with a forest. Over time, the violent wound becomes a place of beauty. The Chicxulub crater, which ended the dinosaurs, is now buried beneath the peaceful waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Time heals. The impacts that shatter us today will, in time, be covered with new growth, softened by the rain, and integrated into the landscape of who we are. We have now entered a time where humans are a geological force. Some scientists call this the Anthropocene. We move more Earth now than the rivers do. We have created a layer of concrete, plastic, and processed metal that will remain in the rock record for millions of years. We are no longer just living on the stage. We are writing the script. It is a heavy responsibility, realizing that our actions today will be read in the stones by the future. We are the ancestors of tomorrow. Let us leave a layer that is gentle, a record that shows we cared for the place that held us. Ultimately, almost every geological process on the surface is powered by the sun. The wind that erodes the rock blows because of solar heat. The water cycle runs because the sun evaporates the ocean. Even the coal we burn is just stored sunlight from the past. We are a planet that is constantly bathed in the energy of a star. We are not isolated. We are being fed energy every moment of every day across the vacuum of space. Open yourself to the warmth. We do not have to generate all our own energy. Sometimes we just need to step into the light and let the universe warm us. And finally, Fact 100. The story is not over. We often look at rocks and think of them as the past, but geology is happening now. Right this second, while you sleep, the Atlantic Ocean is getting wider by a fraction of an inch. The Himalayas are rising taller by the width of a hair. A volcano is brewing new land in the deep sea. A river is carrying a grain of sand that will one day be a sedimentary rock. The Earth is not a finished masterpiece. It is a work in progress. It is still becoming. And so are you. You are not a finished product.
You are a geological process, constantly shifting, growing, eroding, and rebuilding. You are a living planet, spinning in the dark, beautiful and incomplete. Thank you for walking this ancient path with me tonight. We have traveled from the fiery heart of the core to the silent peaks of the mountains, touching the memory of the world along the way. If you are still awake, I hope your mind feels as settled and heavy as the stones we have spoken of, grounded, calm, and at peace. And if you have already drifted off, leaving these words behind, that is wonderful too. That is exactly where you are meant to be. The earth beneath you will continue its slow, steady spin through the dark, carrying you safely until the morning light returns. Everything is held. Everything is in its place. Rest now, deep in the quiet of the world. Good night.